All right. Good morning and evening. Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Apostle Sonia Green, thank you for blessing my entire life. Thank you for blessing my entire life today with your broadcast. I just kept watching and I kept saying to myself, preach it, preach it, preach it. Lord have mercy. If you are not following Sonia Green at Sonia One Green, who is on here tonight, please go and follow her. She is always sharing some insightful wisdom today, and she shared some, I believe, on her Facebook Live. I want to say good evening to everybody and welcome to my evening edition of Daring Dialogues, where I am your host. Oh, yes, it was a good broadcast. She laid some foundation and really spoke from her heart today about what is happening in our society and also concerning policies and what's happening in the election process. So I think it's a broadcast that everybody probably needs to go and listen to. Lady Ravonda Green, thank you for being on tonight. Good evening, Lady Apostle. You have been blessing my life with your Facebook Lives. Another one, blessing my life. Please follow. Let me make sure I give them your handle on here. Apostle Vanessa is her handle. Please follow her. There she is. All you have to do is click on her and hit follow. Prophet Jonathan, thank you for being here tonight. Lady Ilana, Lady Barbara, thank you all for being here tonight. So I am trying to play catch up, as you all know, from this morning. And we are back in the book 11 by Leonard Sweet, talking about relationships, indispensable relationships you can't be without. And we have been talking about, and we started talking about who's your Nathan? Who's your Nathan? So this is the only book that I'm going to be reading from this evening to hopefully be able to pause and stop and kind of talk about some of the things that he shares concerning Nathan. Yes, all three of y'all bless me. They are a blessing to the body of Christ. And let me say this, the world at large. Lady Apostle Sonia talked about that today, that apostles are governmental offices, not just held captive by the church. I won't preach her message, but just go listen to what she had to say on that. All right. So let me get into 11 indispensable relationships you can't be without. We've been talking about who's your Nathan, and we're going to go into a section now called the belly voice versus the heart voice. A welcome intrusion, things that Nathans will do so you can identify the Nathans in your life. All right. And then we're going to close out and call it an evening. Belly voice versus heart voice. And I believe, Lady Barbara, you have ordered this book so you can actually read along with me today. We are on page 34. Belly voice versus heart voice. Isaiah raged against what he called the belly speakers. These were the mediums, get this, and spiritists of his day. Lord have merciful Jesus. What we might call ventriloquists. When you're speaking out of someone else's voice, you're speaking from the belly and not the heart. Listen. Woo! I'm going to let the apostles take that up and just run with it, because I know that you all have lots to say about that. All right? When you're speaking out of someone else's voice, you're speaking from the belly and not the heart. An editor helps you to speak from your own voice And when you lose your voice, an editor helps you hear it again. So, in case you didn't know what is the importance of an editor, that's one of the things that editors in the natural do. All right? They help you to find your voice and speak from your voice. And when you lose your voice in writing, all right, one of the things that editors do is they help you to find your voice again and to hear your voice again. When the well starts to run dry, an editor rushes to prime it with fresh water. Wells that go dry quickly, get this, become hellholes. Woo, Lord. Woo, are you a well or are you a hellhole? Accountability is designed to prevent you from doing bad. Remember, last time we left off talking about the difference between editability versus accountability, right? Accountability is designed to prevent you from doing bad. Editability is designed to help you to do the good. It's designed to help you do what you're good at. All right? The real question is not, are you accountable, but rather, are you editable? Can people come alongside you to help you do good? Can people come alongside you and see what you're doing and say, hey, here's how you can improve. Here's how you can make this better. Here's how you can follow God in a more direct way. I see what you're doing. I see your heart. I see your purpose. I see your vision. But here are some things that will help you be more distinct in your purpose, more detailed in your purpose. Here are some things editors help you to save time, right? Editors help you with things that need to be corrected. They're not there to write your story. They're there to help improve your story. Do you mind your manuscripts being overhauled by other thumbs? What if the script being edited is your life? What if the subject being sculpted is your soul? That's what editors do. They help you to flow. So the writer here tonight is talking about how the spirit of a Nathan, the person who has the character of a Nathan, is one who is like an editor in your life. Where there is love, there is God. This is a popular medieval saying. Even the best writers in the world need editors. In fact, the more something glitters, the more it is in need of spit and polish. Don't believe me? Here's someone you might know through his writing. Some have called him one of the greatest writers of this or any time. His name is Henry James, and here is what he wrote, unedited, in the Times Literary Supplement in 1914. He says, Ms. Wharton not only owes to her cultivated art of putting it in the distinction enjoyed when some ideal of expression has the whole of the case once made its concern in charge, but might further act for us were we to follow up her exhibition as lighting not a little that question of tone, the author's own intrinsic, as to which we have just seen. If you can make heads or tails of what he just said, you're a better reader than I am. What made him one of the greatest writers of this time or any time was the fact that he had an editor who could make heads and tails of what he was trying to convey and turn that into something that people would read and appreciate for ages to come. What makes the Nathans unique in your life is that they are fundamentally best understood as a welcome intruder. They tend to pop in your life unannounced to take the moral temperature of a particular moment, especially at the most inconvenient and disturbing times. These are the people who right now are taking the temperature of our moral climate, and people have serious problems with them because they don't want to hear it. They don't want their moral temperature to be taken. But you need people in your life that will call you and that will get you to think about what it is you're saying, what it is you're believing, right? What it is you're engaged in. But because you are already in a relationship with them and authenticity is your brand, Their temperature taking is always welcome. In a culture of increasing transparency, thanks to the internet and surveillance, okay, the average person in London, for example, is captured on camera over 300 times a day. That's how many cameras they have in London. You refuse them entrance at your peril. A welcome intrusion. Nathan had already given David good advice on a variety of subjects when he dropped in at court that fateful day. In other words, as a already trusted advisor, Nathan wasn't a general nuisance to David. He had access to the king because he was already in a valued relationship with David, one that had contributed significantly to the success of David's kingship. And even though David didn't invite Nathan to edit this part of his life, Nathan had a standing invitation to drop by in carpe momentum when the script desperately needed a rewrite. Sometimes God specializes in the bony finger in the face, and sometimes God specializes in the still small voice from behind. But before either the finger or the whisper, there's always the story. Everyone welcomes a story. Nathan didn't come to David and say, "Boo boo, you messed up." He didn't come to David and say, "Bro, you've done wrong." He came to David and told a story that appeared totally unrelated to the situation that drew David into the trap, into making his own assessment based on the story. Every Nathan has a modicum of Machiavelli. Editors know how to spring you with stories. Nathans don't tell stories to play games or beat around the bush. Exactly, Lady Dreamer. They tell stories because story and image are the most infectious transmitters of truth. Nathan's narrative sounded deep within David long before he felt the sting in his tail. The gospel story always had a sting in its tail, the sting of truth, or more accurately, the double sting of truth and consequences. Nathans care as much as you do about finding the right word or putting the right person in the right place. A Nathan is welcome because this is not an editorial critic with icicles in his or her heart. In other words, this type of person is not just criticizing you just to be critical of you. They're criticizing you to bring about a revelation of truth that's going to help you to be better. All right? It's not just criticism for criticism's sake. We all know people like that cannot find anything positive to say about anything or anybody, right? We don't want to be that person. This is a person who believes in you and wants the best for you, even when he or she shows up at the door with a sword. In other words, I don't want to have to cut you, but if it's going to make you better, I got to show up with a sword. I would like to show up with a pen, but I might have to show up with a sword. Who in your life is able to wield what William Blake speaks of as the spiritual sword that lays open the hidden heart? A Nathan is not a hooded, anonymous executioner who wields a sword, but a trusted surgeon who heals the heart with a scalpel. Even though the knife is sharp and painful and may cut you deeply, red drenched is the color of healing and wholeness. So what is the difference between just, symbolically speaking, what's the difference between somebody who shows up to your door who's a surgeon versus somebody who shows up to your door with murder in mind? All right? Some people would say they have similar tools, but they have different purposes, right? Surgeons are generally not known for coming to cut somebody to kill them, but to heal them, right? In biblical language, Nathan speaks the truth in love. Or, as Paul put it, if someone is detected in a transgression, you who have received the Spirit should restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. Let's back up. If detected in a transgression, not if gossiped about in a transgression. If detected in a transgression, you who have received the Spirit, which means everybody is not qualified to go restore. I know we have a lot of people that want to restore, right? But the Spirit of God is what helps us to know how to properly restore people. Have not the Spirit? Might want to take a seat and receive the Spirit first before you go to try to restore, right? And then it doesn't just tell us that we need the Spirit to be good restorers, but it also says to do it in a spirit of gentleness. Do you know that sometimes when a surgeon comes in and does surgery on you, right? If you've ever had surgery, what do? They put you under. They put you under, right? Sometimes they give you a local anesthesia. Sometimes they numb the area. If you've been to a dentist's office and they got to go in there and do some cutting and scraping and drilling, they numb the area that they getting ready to cut and scrape and drill in. Some of us, we don't numb anything. Help us, God. We go for the jugular, and then we're wondering, like, why are people avoiding us, right? So the surgeon put some anesthesia, right? The anesthesiologist comes in and they have a conversation with you before they put you under. That's a whole other sermon. Can you even have a conversation with me before you put me under, right? So they put you under, and don't ever have the nightmare that I had when I had surgery recently at the end of last year. I woke up in the middle of my surgery because my anesthesia wore off. Traumatized, all right? Still trying to get over that. But you're not supposed to wake up in the middle of your surgery. That anesthesia is supposed to numb certain things. And so we're supposed to be restoring people in the spirit of gentleness. Think about the spirit of gentleness being like that anesthesia. All right? Gentleness. Take care, he says, that you yourselves are not tempted. Some people want to catch you in your own sin, but Nathan wanted David to catch himself in his sin. That's what drove home the issue with David, because Nathan gave him a scenario, he set it up, and then he came back and he said, you are the man. David, I want to set this story up. I want to set the stage for you because I want you to recognize your own sin. Some of our problem today is we keep trying to tell people what their sins are, and they refuse to recognize what their sin is. And so they're going to keep debating you, and they're going to keep saying, but I'm not doing anything wrong, and I don't see anything wrong with it. So at some point, we got to say, Lord, can you show them their own sin? Can you open their eyes so they can see what we see? Can they see what's happening that's ungodly? Because we can say it all day, but open the eyes of their understanding so they will see, and they'll be able to recognize for themselves. So David saw his own sin. Nathan is not someone who rushes to tell you the truth, but someone who helps you to do the truth and see the truth about yourself. James said, be doers of the word and not hearers only. This world has a lot of high octane but low grade leaders who need special editing. This is what the writer says. But whatever your octane or grade, we all need a Nathan. No one has ever been closer to God than Moses. But even the divine face didn't cause the greatest of all prophets to take off his shoes. He had to be told what to do. God told him, "Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." Without a Nathan to give what is often very simple advice, do the word, we remain oblivious to the obvious. Sometimes God is saying to you, do this, and you need help hearing it. The last words the mother of Jesus speaks in the Gospels are these: do whatever he tells you. Especially when the word is to go to places of power. Some Nathans speak the truth and do the word to political power. For example, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Martin Luther King Jr., and Bishop Oscar Romero, and some Nathans speak the truth and do the word to economic power. For example, Gandhi, both who are often known as martyrs. We make out of the quarrel with others rhetoric, but of the quarrel with ourselves poetry. William Butler Yeats. Just so you know, it's not fun being edited. It's not always fun having a Nathan around, but it's necessary. What follows is a list of, just so you know, character traits of the editor you need. Knowing them doesn't always make the process easier. In fact, it might make it more difficult. But most things worth something are difficult. The only similarity between the words edit and easy is that they both start with the letter E. So, here are 3 things that a Nathan will do. Number 1, in case you're taking notes, Nathan will, number 1, get under your skin. A Nathan helps you get under your skin. Ideally, without getting under your skin, but often the irritation comes with the intrusion. You see, the problem is never out there, okay? The problem is always in here. Without a Nathan, you might spend your twilight years wondering what you might have become if you yourself hadn't gotten in your way. The same thing that stirs our basest motives also inspires our noblest acts. Good and evil cohabit with us in ways that we don't want to admit. That's why the more you allow God to use you, the more you need a Nathan in your life. This is exactly what happened in Jesus' life. Not that he had evil in his heart, but that his "your will be done" stance was a green light for Satan to full steam ahead. Right after his highest moment, where he is riding the crest of the wave, his baptism, where he accepts his sonship from the Father, Satan immediately enters the scene to tempt him into a traditional ministry of messiahship. I want you to know that if you have received the sonship of God, if you have accepted that you are a son of God, please understand that Satan is coming to try your identity. You see, right after God affirms him, right after he is accepted as the beloved Son of God, right after, before he does a miracle, before he raises anybody from the dead, before he heals the sick, before he turns water into wine, before he gets the followers and the fans and the critics, God already establishes and solidifies his identity. None of this is in this book, by the way. All right. God solidifies his identity as a son. And what is the first thing that the enemy comes for? His sonship. And here's the sneakiness of how he comes for you if you know that you are a son. He says, I know that God calls you a son. Oh, But if you worship me, I can make you a Messiah. Let me sip my OJ. Lord, Lord, some of us are getting in trouble. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Some of us are getting in trouble because sonship is not enough. Oh God, the Lord done turned the corner on me. Some of us are getting in trouble because sonship is not enough. You want to be Messiah. You don't want sonship. The enemy has deceived you into thinking that your little ministry of Messiahship is greater than the sonship that God is offering to you for eternity. Are you done, Lord? Okay. All right. I'm moving on. Woo, Lord. The deepest steps on the downward path are when you reach the summits of success. The word Satan means accuser in Hebrew. Part of our accusing is to have 4 horsemen sent our way to knock us off our feet. Fear, despair, rage, and guilt. For some people, the devil has only one subject of conversation for them, and that is sex. Of course, the devil would love for us to think that sex is the only thing evil is all about. The only thing the devil likes better than this is to be portrayed as an imp, a small, trivial being that is more of a joke than a scourge. The more I'm around people, someone wrote, the more I love my pets. When Paul talks about the works of the flesh, or sarx, he talks about hostility, jealousy, anger, envy, and competitiveness. The desires of the flesh are not bad. It's when our ego wants those desires for selfish purposes that they become works of the flesh. Works of the flesh. We mishandle our souls, and we can do it in the blink of an eye. Listen, don't fall for messiahship when God has promised you sonship. Nathan's will, number 2, ask questions. Relationships need questions, and questions by definition are intrusive. Questions can comfort. For example, is there anything too hard for God? Questions can challenge you, and questions can convict you. It is possible to accomplish much, but never amount to much. When it comes to goodness, we confuse good with good at. It's an editor's job to get you to ask the questions. Is God's name glorified, or is it smeared in my life? We easily bind the Spirit of Christ in the fetters of our imagination, our religion, or our systems. An editor helps to let the Spirit of Christ break free from our mind-forged shackles. In a world full of people who never even look you in the eye, a Nathan looks you in the eye and many times looks straight through you and asks questions like, do you think God's doing that? Do you think God's going to ask you one day, how many books did you write? It's not usually a Nathan's job to help you find the way out of your problem or your midlife crisis. I had a friend who, when he turned 50, came to his wife and said, "Dear, it's your choice, a Mazda Miata or a mistress." But a Nathan asked intrusive questions about those ill-fitting parts of our personalities and problems that need fixing. A Nathan also inspires you in the virtue of resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity. Number 3, a Nathan will tell the truth. Please, let me put my book down for a moment. Ooh, Lord, let me Let me take a sip of my OJ for a moment. Excuse me for a moment. This is as politely as I can put it. If you don't want to know the truth, don't ask Nathans. If you don't want to know the truth, don't ask me. Because when I tell people the truth, then they get upset. And then I'm thinking to myself, why did they ask me? Oh my goodness. You know I'm going to tell you the truth. So if you really didn't want to hear the truth, then why did you ask me? You could have asked someone else who would have given you a distortion or a little piece of the truth, right? So I don't know. But people tend to want to ask the truth of people that they know are going to tell them the truth. And then they get upset because the person told them the truth, but you asked for the truth. You didn't say, in your opinion. You asked me for my opinion, I'm going to give you my opinion. You asked me for the truth, I'm going to tell you what thus saith the Lord. All right? And usually, my opinion, because I don't want to get in trouble with God, my opinion usually aligns with thus saith the Lord. Okay? So, just putting a disclaimer out there. Do not roll up in my inbox and ask me. Tell me the truth. Don't roll up in my inbox and tell me and ask that, because I'm going to tell you the truth, because that's what you asked for. All right? And then if I don't ever hear from you again, I'm going to know that you can't handle the truth. A Nathan helps us see the truth about ourselves. And Lord, some of us know that we grew up in households with Nathans who were always telling us the truth about ourselves, right? And maybe even speak it. And the truth is, you aren't as good as you imagine you are. However, you aren't as bad as you fear that you are. The line in us separating humbug from hero gets thinner and thinner the wiser we get. It is hard for us to have correct valuation of our own strengths and best assets. Linus Pauling won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1954. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1962. But he was totally wrong about what he deemed his greatest discovery and contribution was: the cancer-fighting value of vitamin C. We always know less than we think, and in some sense speak more falsehood than truth, if approximate truth is less a species of truth than a species of falsehood. We all can only come close to the whole truth at best. I take perhaps too much pleasure in knowing that Augustine changed his mind over time and came to different answers about the same questions that he studied during his life. At nearly 60 years old, Augustine wrote to a friend, Cicero, greatest author of the Roman language, says of someone that, quote, he never uttered a word which he wished he could take back. High praise indeed, but more applicable to a complete moron than to a genuinely wise man. Truth-telling is a major role of an editor, not truth dumping, which psychiatrist Willard Galen warns can be every bit as cruel as habitual lying. Wow. A Nathan finds ways to come and get us and make us proud, rebellious, impatient, and all, own up to the truth, even when we're in hiding. It's not that Nathan's editorial self haunts you, casting a critical eye over everything you do. Rather, Nathan's editorial eye helps you see the very things you are running from. Again, Nathan didn't just flat out come out and tell David, you sinned. No, he got David to recognize his own sin. The difficult truth can concern little things. Our sins make us look ridiculous more than anything else. Who tells you how ridiculous you look walking around with dandruff on your shoulder or a booger in your nose? Christianity quickly becomes Niceanity, and a Nathan doesn't live on planet Nice, at least when we're around. You know you've been pricked and prodded by a Nathan when you leave an encounter thinking, there are kinder words that could have been said to me, but there are not truer words that could have been said. Nathans practice radical honesty even about the little things. Or truth can be about the big things. Some of the most frightening words in Scripture occur in one sentence. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That was said of Samson. Now, can you imagine what kind of life Samson could have led if he had had a Nathan in his life? Just think about that. He had parents that let him go off and do his own thing. He had parents that said, I don't know why that boy loved them Valley girls. But that was about as much as they said, right? But imagine what kind of biblical record would we have had of Samson's life if he had a Nathan in his life? Sometimes the little things are the big things, like a Nathan telling you which hat to wear. Savonarola, preaching against the excessive pomp and circumstance of worldly popes in the 1400s, was offered a cardinal's hat, which certain Nathans close to him warned was the institution's attempt to silence him. How many people have been silenced today because they took a gift rather than spoke the truth to power? From the pulpit, Savonarola announced his decision. He sought a red hat, he admitted, but one red with a martyr's blood, if need be, not the red hat of the papal worldly glory. We are tempted to think of a Nathan as the kind of person who likes short skirts on women. Good evening. But only because it saves on material. But Nathans come in many shapes and sizes, and your spouse often makes, oh God, the best Nathan. Let me take a sip on that. Because I can attest to that. We are definitely each other's Nathans. Please know if you are marrying a Nathan. And sometimes we're revealing stuff about each other and we don't even know it. We're just having conversation. But God is good like that. It's called grace. Yes, I am wearing tonight, take a little break, take a little pause in teaching here. I believe in miracles. You can find this shirt at warriorapparel.com. Thank you, Pastor Ben, for gifting these to my husband and I. So sometimes your spouse makes the best Nathan. Who else can tell you what sucks about you? What you struck out on? What stuck out in your life? Who else can see faster when you have crossed the line from being beguiling to bewildering? When your strangeness becomes estrangement? Who will tell you that it is annoying or cloying, or that it appears a trifle cozy, or that it, despite your enthusiasm, is no great shakes? Who else will tell you that you just crossed that moving line of one thought too many? Who else is going to tell you that you are putting too much stuff online that's TMI? Yeah. So sometimes Your spouse often makes the best Nathan in your life. Tie a gift to the saddle. Everybody needs a Nathan. Even Nathans need Nathans. Your Nathan may sometimes be a donkey that refuses to move, or a whale that rescrambles your relationships, restructures your realities, and regurgitates a purged you up on the shore. But whatever or whomever your Nathan, tie a gift to the saddle. The 17th century haiku master Basho was walking around the island of Japan in 1689 and got lost. He asked the farmer for directions, but the farmer said, "It's easier if you just take my horse. He knows the way. When you get to the next town, just let him go and he'll come home." So, Basho let the farmer's horse lead him. Once they arrived safely at the next town, he sent the horse home, but not before tying a gift to the empty saddle. I love the image of the riderless horse with a gift tied to its saddle. It's incredibly important to tie a gift to the saddle for all of your relationships. Relationships dissolve and decay. They are broken off, connections may be severed, distances become too great, sometimes physical and sometimes emotional. We change, and with it, our interests and circumstances, our enjoyments, and our education are altered. So, too, there are changes in the relationships built on old interests and circumstances. This is not a matter of our need to totally reconfigure our network or spheres of people, but it is a reflection of our consistent reconfiguration and of the impact that change can have on our relationships. No matter how walk on a role they played, former witnesses should have hallowed places in our lives. As much as we would like Cicero to be right, that the end of a relationship should be more like one having been burned out rather than have been stamped out, many of the 11 relationships may be broken by deceit and betrayal. Even so, we must honor our past and tie a gift to the saddle. We must speak well of every bridge that carries us across. Honor is about speaking well of the bridges that carry you across. Unfortunately, we live in a society when once people get across, they burn the bridge or they start talking about the bridge. But if you're an honorable person, every bridge that carries you across, you will speak well of. Doesn't mean the person was perfect, but they were a bridge that got you across. Let me move on. Because I'll start preaching. The obligation of oblation. You will get lost. Let me repeat. You will get lost. As human beings, you will get lost. Like I found out yesterday, you will lose some things accidentally. You are human. We all lose our way. Everybody gets lost for a while. Anyone reading this not taking some charming byways of irrelevance in your life and some dangerous back alleys of irrelevance? All right? He said, when I was a teenager, I didn't sow wild oats. I planted a prairie. Can you imagine former President Bill Clinton naming one of his children Kenneth Starr Clinton? Do you recall what David named his son? Does anybody recall what David named his son? That's right, Nathan. And that's the line through which Jesus came, through Mary's side. Naming his son Nathan was David's way of tying a gift to the saddle, fulfilling the obligation of oblation. When a rewrite happens and you've had a Nathan, tie a gift to the saddle. One of the things in the editing world that people notate, and exactly, Nathan means gift from God. One of the things that people notate in the publishing world is they notate whether or not authors cite their editor or give credit to their editor. It's one of those unspoken things that if you don't credit your editor, you're probably going to have a hard time getting a future book done. Tie a gift to the saddle. Which leads us to the next friend. We got about 15 minutes, so I'm going to start our next friend here. The next relationship person that we need in our life. Exactly. Thank you, Latoya Mitchell. Give honor where honor is due. And welcome to the broadcast. Who's your Jonathan? For those of you who are just coming in, we're reading from a book that I would personally recommend every pastor read this book. If you are a person that does progressive Sunday schools, where you have Sunday school courses and classes, this would be an excellent book to dig into. Every chapter has questions in the back for discussion and study and more in-depth teaching. Excellent, excellent, excellent book. If you are forming a ministry, your leadership team should probably be reading this book. All right? It's that good. So let me go on. And this is not a paid sponsorship, by the way. It's just an excellent book. Witness number 2. The writer does not call these people, he does not call them witnesses. I'll get you the author in just a second. Or Lady Barbara, if you're still on here, you can put up the author if you would. He doesn't call them witnesses. He calls them witnesses. Witnesses. Because these are people who are with you in relationships. All right. So I'm not misspeaking. That's actually what he calls them in the book. The second person is, yes, the author is Leonard Sweet. The second person is, who's your Jonathan? Where is Prophet Jonathan on here? He might still be on, or he might have stepped away. Who's your Jonathan? You need a true friend. Everybody needs a true friend. Everybody needs a friend who have seen you with your nappy hair, with your peas, without your makeup, in my case, without my eyebrows. A true friend who have seen you with snot and boogers. A true friend who has maybe seen you come straight out of surgery and you look a hot mess. A true friend who has seen you without MAC makeup. A true friend who has seen you with ashy knees and elbows. A true friend. Who's your Jonathan? There are only 2 people who can tell you the truth about yourself. An enemy who has lost his temper and a friend who loves you dearly. Philosopher Antisthenes the Cynic. Joseph Heller is famous for his cult status novel Catch-22, often cited as one of the greatest literary works of the 20th century. But Heller wrote another novel that is equally as provocative and mockingly humorous, yet unknown. God Knows is a novel about David, a figure who has captured the imagination of many people both within and without the Christian tradition. U2 singer Bono, the new Mother Teresa, has dubbed David, quote unquote, the Elvis of the Bible, and celebrated this king's songwriting ability as a formative influence on his own life as a musician and a follower of Jesus. In Heller's novel, David says, quote, I don't like to boast, but I honestly think I have the best story in the Bible. Old Sarah's fun. Abraham, of course, is ever up to the mark. Joseph is pretty lively as the pampered, late-born, bratty favorite of his doting father. Moses isn't bad. I have to admit he's very, very long. Moses has the 10 Commandments, it's true, but I have better lines. I've got the poetry and the passion, savage violence and the plain, raw, civilizing grief of human heartbreak. What both Heller and Bono failed to mention is that David has one more thing, the best thing anybody can have, a Jonathan. Jonathan, the son of King Saul, loved David as himself. Remember that scripture? You know, the one that says, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, which means I can't have proper self love, I can't have proper neighbor love until I have proper self love. So if I hate myself, then chances are I'm going to have a hard time loving my neighbor. If I'm overly critical and overly judgmental of myself, if I beat myself up all the time, chances are it's going to be hard for me to say good stuff about my neighbor. That's just reality. If I don't have a proper image of myself, chances are I'm going to damage any relationship I have with someone of the opposite sex by virtue of the fact that I am not well within myself. All right? That's not pop psychology, that's Bible. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. All right? So pay attention to people who don't want you to focus on healing and wholeness for yourself. That's a red flag. All right? I don't care if it's a preacher or not. A Jonathan is a true friend. There is a biblical text that lists increasing degrees of relational intimacy and intensity. Your very own brother, or your son or daughter, or the wife you love, or your closest friend. Does anybody know where that is? It's one of those scriptures that that people tend to pull out when they're talking about prophecy. But Deuteronomy 13 tells you the marks of a actual false prophet. A lot of times people think that prophets are just false because of a false word. But a false prophet gives a true word and lives a fake life. Do I need to say that again? False prophets can give an accurate word, a true word, and live a fake life. Meaning that after they get done prophesying, they can still teach you and lead you away from God. One more time, Pastor. Okay. A false prophet can give a true and accurate word and lead a fake life. It happens all the time, and people are fooled by people because they give an accurate word, but their life is trash. So Deuteronomy 13, in case you need to go look at the whole text, Deuteronomy 13 talks about this false prophet who can speak accurately, but the key is where do they lead you after the accurate word? Where do they lead you after the amen? Where do they lead you after the altar call? Do they lead you back to their hotel to go commit fornication after they just gave you an accurate word? That's a false prophet. All right? And the scripture is very, very clear. It says in Deuteronomy 13 that they will lead you away to go serve another God. And then in that same chapter in verse 6, it lays out levels of relationships of possible people that can do this. So it says, even if your very own brother tells you to do the opposite of what God tells you, or it's your son or your daughter, or the wife that you love, or your closest friend. All right? So it's basically telling you it doesn't matter the level or the intensity of the relationship. If the person is leading you away from God, don't follow them. Your friend who loves you as himself or herself is the biblical definition of a true friend. So that means you got to look at how your friends are loving themselves. Do they love themselves? That's question number one. And then how do they love themselves? Do they love themselves to the point that they don't care about anybody else? Are they loving themselves at the point of harming other people to maintain their self-love? Are they harming people and saying that that's part of how they take care of themselves? These are things we should pay attention to. Let me move on. The true friend is, so to speak, a second self. Many times, people will say, maybe in conversation, they might be having a conversation with you, and they might say, you remind me of so and so. You all have similar qualities or similar characteristics, right? And then you meet that person and realize, wow, we really do have those similar characteristics or similar qualities, and you wind up being a very good friend to that person. Exactly. You might have a kindred spirit, not a familiar spirit, a kindred spirit, all right? Your second self. A Jonathan believes in you when no one else does. A Jonathan is loyal even when you make it hard to be loyal. Some people do make it hard to be loyal. Sometimes it's because they haven't been taught what it means to be loyal, or sometimes they've been in situations where they have been betrayed so much that they distrust anybody. And so when loyal people come into their life, they don't know what to do with loyal people. Sometimes they're not loyal themselves, and so they don't recognize loyalty. All right. But a Jonathan is loyal even when you make it hard for them to be loyal. And we talked about that on Sunday. We went into detail about qualities of loyalty. A Jonathan is the first to call in good times or in bad. They don't just call you when you're doing good. All right. And sometimes people say, well, watch out for the person that calls you only when you're doing good. I say also watch out for the person that calls you only when you're doing bad. When you're doing bad, they always show up somehow. But when you're doing good, they disappear. Are you attached to my bad? Or are you attached to me all the time? A Jonathan is the first to call you in good times or in bad. A Jonathan gives and wants no payment. A Jonathan walks with you in all seasons, like the winter of your discontent. A Jonathan staunches the internal bleeding from your body when you are depressed, which shows up frequently, by the way, in David's Psalms. If melancholy prepares the devil's bath, as Martin Luther liked to put it from personal experience, a Jonathan fights to turn off the faucets of depression in your life. A Jonathan will not let you surrender to your dark side. Oh goodness. There's this thing that they call the dark night of the soul, or when people get into bouts of depression and they're fighting off darkness. A Jonathan will not let you surrender to doing evil. A Jonathan will not say, go ahead and do it. Take them out. No. A Jonathan will not let you surrender to your dark side. A Jonathan holds on to you for dear life when you're about to fall into that grave of a black, bottomless pit where death hides. If you've never experienced the dark night of the soul, I pray you never experience it. But some of us have. And if we didn't have Jonathans in our life, we would be in very, very bad places. But Jonathans refuse to let you go off into that dark side. They will fight for your life. Those are Jonathans. Please do not discard the Jonathans that show up in your life in the dark night of your soul. Why is it that all men who have become outstanding in philosophy, statesmanship, poetry, or the arts are melancholic, and some to such an extent that they are infected by the diseases arising from black bile. Aristotle, in history's first known reference to the melancholy of creative people. A Jonathan has seen you naked in all your treachery and lechery, at your most heinous and most luminous, and loves you still. A Jonathan keeps you in check when you want what you cannot have. A Jonathan grants you grace when you take them for granted. A Jonathan defends your life's meaning when your life seemingly has no meaning. But most of all, a Jonathan sacrifices themselves for you, even knowing, as the original Jonathan knew, that the more your song rises, the more his or her own song fades into the background. My God. You just got to Selah that. Because the maidens, at the time when David started battling, the maidens would sing. And they would say, Saul has killed his thousands. Saul has killed his 10,000s. But David has killed his hundreds of thousands. In other words, when the song switches, when the song changes, and the tune is no longer about you, what is your response? Jonathan didn't say stop the music. No. Jonathan recognized who his friend was. Jonathan said, not only do I want your song to play, but I'm going to give you my coat. I'm going to give you, in other words, I'm going to give you all the tools to be future king. Because I can see in you what's not in me. I'm your friend, but I'm not the king. I know naturally I'm supposed to be the next after my father, but I have enough sense and enough insight to know that I'm not next. Oh God. Excuse me for those just coming in. I'm not normally this animated, but I'm animated tonight. I want to read that one more time. Because some of us need to understand, you're not David. You're Jonathan. And it's okay to be Jonathan. Jonathan knew that the more David's song rose, the more his own song would fade into the background. A Jonathan is willing to lead a life of decreasing significance, or as John the Baptist put it so eloquently about his younger cousin Jesus, he must become greater, I must become less. And even in his becoming less, he still gets a place in history that we are now still reading about and still talking about. Oh my God. Sometimes, Lord have mercy. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Sometimes your legacy is in your less. Whew. I'm going to have to go back and meditate on that right there. Sometimes your legacy is in your less. I don't see nobody with a shirt that says, I must become less. Woo! I just got to say law for a moment. Y'all have to excuse me. Because that ain't in the book. Barbara, I know you're reading along with me, so you know it's not in the book. The greatest act of true friendship in history, Jesus' death. Greater love has no man than this, no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. You, Jesus said, are my friends. Harry Potter had Ron, his Jonathan, who in a dramatic life-size game of chess was willing to take a sword that his friend might move on to the next level. Do you have a Jonathan who is willing to take a bullet for you, who is willing to say, the finest thing I could ever do in my life would be to lay down my life for you? Not best, but true. A Jonathan is more than an acquaintance or a companion. The writer of Proverbs warned about confusing the two. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Or in my favorite translation of the verse, some friends play at friendship, but a true friend sticks closer than one's nearest kin. We're going to finish up this section, and then I'm going to release this Periscope for tonight. Who is closer to you than a brother or a sister? Who is that second self? Who stands firm in your life? Who stands by you in good times and bad? Susan Sontag said, "We all carry two passports, one for the land of the well, one for the land of the ill. Any minute, the passport of the land of the well can be revoked, and you're in another land entirely. Who's still with you then?" Notice I didn't say best friend, but true friend. Yes, I believe someone can be both a Jonathan and a Nathan. True friend. Each one of these 11 is your best friend. It all depends on where you are in life, which best is best. The worst thing you can do is play favorites with these 11 people you absolutely need in your life. God doesn't play favorites with us. We mustn't fall into the trap. Oh God. Whew, this word right here. Please write this down somewhere and put this somewhere you can see it every day. Let me make sure I spell this right. We must not fall into this trap right here of relational hierarchy. Sooner or later, this game forces you to pit friend against friend. Whether directly or indirectly, the Irish defined Jonathan, hope you all are still there, sorry about that. The Irish defined Jonathan as the anam cara, the soul friend, the true friend. I'll leave you with this last scripture. Ecclesiasticus 6:14 and 16 says, "Faithful friends are a sturdy shelter. Whoever finds one has found a treasure. Faithful friends are life-saving medicine." So, we come back, Lord willing, on Monday. We'll be talking about Jonathan. We'll continue and end with some qualities about Jonathan. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I am your host, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for your time and attention and allowing me to come back and do an evening edition with you. If you're on for the first time, we are on normally Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that you will join us tomorrow for Wednesday, where we'll be talking about marriage and dating. All right? That's our relationship segment for Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so please go out and be light. I will post this broadcast tonight on my Facebook page, Daring Dialogue. So if you're looking for some of the broadcasts, I've been able to capture some of them and put them on the Daring Dialogues page on Facebook. So you can search that page, share the broadcast there as well. Thank you all for your time and attention tonight. Take care and God bless.